Yes, guys, hello and welcome for one last time. You're joined by Dean and Gianni this season. Dean, this is our last dance, our end of season awards. How you feeling, mate?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. Yeah, didn't quite get to where I wanted to be in the end. Came third in the old mini league, so yeah, just missed out on second in the end. The guy who's second, Captain Foden, fair play to him, and the guy at the top ended up running away with it in the end. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. Finished about 400 and something overall. So again, dropped down. Didn't get into the top 300,000 like I wanted to in the end. But it's okay, mate. I mean, I definitely made up ground in the last 6-7 weeks to what would have been a bit of an embarrassing season. Really, I'd have been down in the 700,000-800,000 if I'd have carried on the way I was going. So I did manage to rescue it, and largely it's down to David Raya, Saliba. Partnership that was the foundation of it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good. What did you make of the final day in terms of the amount of goals? Because we both discussed like game week 38 comes with goals, and it didn't disappoint in terms of like volume. There was some big. I mean, we both said we fancied Palace to go big as well, and I backed that Palace fixture by going on Elise. I just backed the wrong horse, but I backed the right team. I should have gone Eze on Mateta, but we saw a lot of goals yesterday. It was proper chaos for 2 hours.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I had Mateta, so his hat trick saved me massively. I might have even finished fourth if it wasn't for him. It was just a case we didn't really know where those goals were going to come from. We knew there would be a couple of big matches, and we're second guessing where it might happen. There was always the possibility the Aston Villa players were still drunk from the other night, and it proved to be a bit of a hangover. So that was something that Mateta and Eze took advantage of. And then it was all a bit weird. The Chelsea game didn't really take off in the way that I thought it might. But it was a decent last day, I mean, it's just if you're an Arsenal fan, obviously you're just deflated because Foden scores that first goal so early. It just kind of knocks the wind out of your sails if you're an Arsenal fan in that moment. I was in a pub and it was full of Arsenal fans, and they were all so optimistic. And the City game actually started 2 minutes after the Arsenal one, which I found weird. Yeah, I thought they'd kick off simultaneously, but they didn't. It was 2 minutes behind. And so Arsenal were like 3 or 4 minutes into their game as Foden scores. And everyone's just like, one bloke goes mental at the bar. Everyone else is just silent. A few actually walked out of the pub when the free kick went in against Arsenal for it. Deflects off Rice and goes in. A few walked out. It's like, blimey, lads, you've just almost won the title. You don't do walk out. You're giving it a good shot here. But yeah, it was a good season. CH says, I think I might have finished below Dean. I think he finished about 100 above me, CH, or 1,000 above me. I think it's very close between us. I think it's very close between us, but I think you've actually done me. If you finished 473, I think I was 474. So you've done me there.
Yeah, let us all know your rank in the chat. I see animations just put 83k. Just put your number in the chat where you finished. I bet FPL Chai is probably maybe top, although he did drift out to like 1800th in the world, which is still absolutely amazing. But Chai was in and around the top 10 for so long. I don't expect there's too many watching that will be 1800. So let us know in the chat. And also, if my audio is rubbish, also let me know and I can take my headphones out, or I can mute when I'm not talking.
It's okay,
music on. Is it? Yeah.
It seems okay. Yeah.
Linda on 48k. Love that.
Wow, well done. Gary's 39k, Jason 34k, Getty 15k. Unbelievable going, everyone. I'm glad to see our advice paid off, mate.
Ziad must have won our mini league 12-28.
So who did win our mini league? Let's have a quick look here. Yeah, Ziad did. Yeah.
Ziad, I don't know what we can give you in terms of a prize, but if you somehow are able to give us your Twitter handle so I can follow you so we can chat in DMs, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, do that. It was very close. Just looking at it now, between the top 4, there was only 11 points between the top 4 in our Chasing Green Arrows League. So Ziad has really had to see off some stiff competition to stay there. Really, really competitive, that is. Whereabouts were you in the end, mate? What was your overall?
started the day on 42k in the world, and I finished the day, I think, on 46. I need to check. It might be 47. God, I didn't even care by the point of games had finished, because I was like, yeah, 47.
It's still very good, mate.
Yeah, so I guess I take it. I don't really care if I finish 42 or 47. I guess between like 21 and 50, or maybe even 70 or 80, it's still like the same bracket. You're not in the 20k, you're not in the 10 or the 100.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't really matter. Oh, Holly Shand is watching. Hey, Holly, I spent a lot of yesterday with Holly. Holly, are you back in Grimsby, or are you on the train, or are you in London still? Let us know.
You're on the way back from the same place, and you're still in a hotel, and she's managed to get home.
Pretty much, yeah. Holly was staying in a Premier Inn in Marylebone, and she was in a Premier Inn Hub, which is like the smaller, more modern ones with like smaller windows and stuff. And I'm in Premier Inn in Hammersmith. The budget for me didn't quite stretch to West London, so
Holly's made it.
Central West, yeah.
Holly's made it. She's made it home as well.
Home to Grimsby, early start. I mean, when you've got 2 kids, you're not going to hang around in a hotel all day.
Holly's got one. You should probably be home.
Holly's a better mum than I am dad, clearly.
Fair enough.
Oh, good. Right, I'm glad she's with us in the chat. Guys, if you fancy hitting those buttons, likes and subscribes would be well good. I guess, Dean, today we've dubbed it as the awards, and we've got a ton of awards to get through, and we want the chat to contribute to the awards. So shall we, rather than reflecting too much on yesterday's game, should we just get straight into our awards, and the chat can really let us know what they think? We've had a few saying about Euros content. We are looking to do some Euros content on this channel, so watch this space for that.
You will be.
We're looking maybe a couple of shows before the first match day, and then maybe like a show before every match day. So
we'll try and get you all prepped for that. Definitely, we are definitely planning to do that. We're looking at the app now and seeing what we can offer you. So I'm sure G will be fully engaged in that by the time we get there. And obviously, I'm doing loads of Euros coverage for Ranks FC as well, so we'll be ready for that. Catherine says, "Thanks so much for all your advice and content." I presume she's talking to you. I won my mini league by 18 points. Couldn't have done it without you. Well, there you go. Well done, Catherine. That's great. I hope a lot of you won your mini leagues, because we do take it more seriously than most people. So that should give you an edge. I finished 3rd in my main mini league in the end, but it's always close. So I'll take that. At least I was in the money rankings this time around. Do you want to talk us through the awards, mate?
Yeah, I've pretty much picked out like a few of the classics: overrated, underrated, biggest flop. We're going to look at the newcomer, best newly promoted player, best manager, and then each position. Rather than go best defender, best midfielder, we're not just going to pick out the guy that got the most points. We're going to look at value, because with FPL, money's our biggest challenge. So looking at value of a player is so important. And this might sometimes be more personal to me or Dean, or it might be for the masses. But we want your input in terms of overrated, well, in terms of every single one. So Dean, let's kick off with our overrated picks and see where we sit and where everyone in the chat sits. Just put your name in for most overrated player in the chat. We'll call some of our favourites out. I've gone with Haaland. I just think that his price was too high. Like, I think we're going to see a big deduction. I still had him in my team a ton, but I do feel like he was perhaps a bit overrated. Like, Ollie Watkins got more points than him, and he was 5 million less. Now, yes, Ollie Watkins had an amazing season, but Haaland was still a bit overrated. And FPL Chai straight off the bat went with Haaland too. Yeah.
Like, I've gone with Trent because, I mean, he just didn't live up to what everybody was expecting from him.
Yeah. No clean sheets. Barely any clean sheets at Liverpool.
But any clean sheets, everyone thought he was going to be turned into this midfielder who was going to be getting loads of assists, probably goals as well. Set pieces would be paying off. It cost a lot of money. He's 8.4 rated. And, you know, he got a decent points total in the end. He got to 122 points. But for the amount he costs, he should be in the top 3. Yeah. And he's not. He's like 9th, 10th. And all the players around him cost like between 4.5 million and 5.5 million. Yeah. So the value just wasn't there all season for me to get Trent. Like, nobody in this list is anywhere near the cost that he was. Yeah. So it just for me, like, that is just extremely overrated pick. If you're going to be spending over £8 million on a defender, they've got to be undoubtedly the best in the game. And with Haaland, at least you know you are getting the best striker in the game. With Trent, you're not getting the best. I think I'm going to veer with you here, mate. I think Trent is a stronger argument. Like, I'm looking at his totals of years gone by. The reason Trent was so expensive, in the last 6 seasons, he's had 156 points. Remember, he's just had 122. So he's had a 156, a 208, 200 points of
as a defender is the holy grail. 160, 210, 185. Like, this guy has put up big numbers in the past. He's justified the price. Well, this season he was more expensive than ever, and it was his worst season since he's been in the starting 11. So yeah, I think we can actually go with Trent there, which is really interesting because no one in the chat was thinking Trent either. We've had suggestions of Porro and Saka, and I think Offcore did go Trent, Martinelli. So that's really interesting. Let's go underrated. Who do we go for with our underrated picks? Let us know. FPL Joe says Trippier fell off as well. He was pricey.
Yeah,
but Trent's money was huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Underrated. I've gone for a guy that barely anyone owned this season at any point.
Yep.
And he put up big numbers. Like, when we look at the best performing midfielders in the game, Jared Bowen is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's the 8th best performer. Bowen got more points than Bruno, than Havertz, than Pascal Gross, than Luis Diaz and Bernardo and Trossard and Kudus and Eze, Garnacho, Johnson, like players we actually bought. Well, Bowen outperformed them. You've gone Gvardiol.
Yeah, no, Bowen's a good pick, and I was on him like early in the season talking about him as a good pick, maybe even from week 1 saying I should have picked Bowen, and never really went there properly. Gvardiol, I feel, was a player that just went underrated for far too long. By the end of the season, he's 18% owned, but that wasn't the case even 4 or 5 weeks ago before he started coming in with all the hauls. He was a player that was a instrumental part of what Pep was going to be achieving. You knew he was going to be playing. His cost was 5.2 million, and he's coming now at the end of the season as the 7th best defender in the game. So you've got a defender playing for the team that's going to win the league. You know they've got a good defence. He's guaranteed to play. He's only just over £5 million, and barely anyone had him for most of the season. Luckily for me, I got on him just in time to get all of the points that he was accumulating with his goals. But yeah, I think that Gvardiol was a massively underrated pick.
Yeah, no, agreed. I wonder, there's some great suggestions in the chat. Declan White, Linda says. I think White as the best performing defender. We all bought Gabriel and Saliba when we bought Arsenal defenders, and White is a great shout. Mateta, a load have gone for, but I wonder if we're thinking there of recency bias. Over the course of the season, Mateta wasn't a good pick for the first 6 months or whatever, however long. So
once Glasner came in, he was,
yeah, exactly. If we're going recently, Mateta definitely. But over the course of a season, Mark agrees with Ben White. Andrew said White. I think Ben White might actually take it. Sokan too. So let's go with White there as our biggest underrated.
Well, he's turned out to be the best defender in the game, hasn't he? But definitely no one was expecting at the start of the season. So that's fair enough. Yeah,
exactly that. The biggest flop. This was an interesting one. I can't remember who I went for here. Let's have a look at the biggest flop. Guys, who do you think was the biggest flop? Oh, I think I do know. Yeah, I went Darwin. Yeah, I thought, okay. For me personally, Darwin was a huge, huge flop. He also didn't clap yesterday when Klopp walked through the Guard of Honour. He was the only Liverpool player not clapping. I was like, wow, there's clearly been we knew there'd been a fallout, but yeah, clearly a big fallout there. But I think because it was his second season, I expected so much from Darwin. Like, I gave him that first season off. I was like, he's finding his feet, blah, 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 blah. This is going to be his breakthrough. And at times I bought him in FPL quite a lot this year. And he got some okay, but it wasn't dreadful for me, but he should have performed way, way better than he did. In the team that he plays in, with the chances they create, Darwin was underwhelming. You've got a Nana,
I've got a Nana more from an overall football perspective more than just FPL, because Onana was brought in to transform the way that Man United played, right? And if you think back to those weeks and months at the beginning of the season, and probably went a bit too far at times. Onana being basically described as a clown. So Lewis saying Onana had 3rd best FPL points for keeper. Like, I'm not talking about FPL here, but like in terms of a flop, I'm having Onana in there because Man United would have been better off if they'd just stuck with De Gea. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Man United would have been better off this season with De Gea in goal because he would have saved more shots. And I'm sorry, but Onana coming in because he's good at passing out of the back, I didn't see enough of that.
Yeah,
I don't think that was good enough. So I'm having Onana down as my flop of the season.
Oh, FPL Discomfort may have just taken it with scratched out Reece 2 red cards in 400 minutes. Is James. That's a fair point.
That is actually a good shout.
Because he's been around all season playing. I like the Darwin and Onana shouts. But yeah, I get Reece James massively has flopped because he's just not been around. And Kunku, Sterling, a lot of Chelsea players. Rashford and Højlund deserve shout outs. Timber with his injury. I'd still be tempted to go Darwin, but I like all those suggestions.
Yeah, Solly March, blimey, remember him?
Jesus, yeah, they were Brighton's sort of attackers and their injuries. Ansu Fati, Matoma, March, like March especially, I guess, with the time he's been out, but they've been so unfortunate. Let's have a look at the best newcomer. This is where it gets fun. The best newcomer and newly promoted and best manager I'm looking forward to discussing. So let's go there. We've got our teams of the season coming back. I have gone controversial. Nico Jackson has been absolutely a good asset. And Cole Palmer, quite clearly, like absolutely huge performances. He's got more points than any other player in the game this season, Dean, and he was 5 million to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, Palmer was the one you had to have all season, wasn't he? Best newcomer, both Chelsea players. Who'd have thought that, given the season that they had for most of the year, would be listed for awards. But, I mean, I could argue Jackson was also biggest flop of the season because he could have had 30 goals. But Palmer's just hands down like an absolute revelation. Like to have that much confidence in yourself that you're like, okay, well, if I can't get in this Man City team, I need to go and play somewhere else because I'm too good to be sat here just playing a bit part. And for City to be like, okay, fine, like we're not going to stand in your way, and to go to Chelsea and do it, to be the guy, to be the main man, to have an extraordinary season in FPL terms as well as in real terms. It's absolutely different class from Palmer.
Yeah, it's fair play. I can't argue with that. I was trying to be different, but Palmer's just been sensational. I think we'll talk about price predictions of a few key players later in the show. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get your take on prices of like 8 to 10 of the game's sort of popular assets. And I've listed Palmer in that. And it's going to be a huge jump. Of course it is. But best newly promoted. Let's have a look who we went with here. I think rather than newly promoted team, I think we're looking at assets from the 3 newly promoted teams. So I think I may have gone Doughty. Let's have a look. Best newly promoted. I see Jason in the chat has already gone in early with Adebayo as an option. I do think when we look at some of those Luton players, there will be suitors for a few of them, like Doughty and Adebayo. I'm not sure there'll be many Premier League clubs buying Burnley and Sheffield United players, if any, but we'll definitely see a few Luton players like in demand. I think we can probably move on. I don't know if we've got a slight glitch, but not showing yet on screen the best newly promoted. I'm sure that'll be coming in any second. Here we go. Doughty for me. When you get 10 assists or 11 assists, whatever it was from fullback, you're gonna catch the eyes of other Premier League clubs. It was interesting that game week 1 and the first few game weeks, I don't think he could get in the 11. He wasn't actually first choice starting the season, which was remarkable. But yeah, do you think he'll have suitors, Dean? I don't know his age, but Adebayo's young. Doughty, I think, is relatively young too.
Yeah, no, Alfie Doughty has definitely already got 2 or 3 clubs looking at him. There's no way he's going to be playing in the Championship next season. He's going to be joining another Premier League team. He's only 24. So he's 100% going to have interest in him, and he'll have his pick of clubs almost because he's been so impressive. You know, when it first came into the game, we were looking at potential players that might be worth having on the bench. Don't think he was one of them that we had listed. You know, from Luton, most people thought Morris was the one that might be the one. And in the end, Morris was a decent pick, right? I think he actually ended the season the only Luton player who had more points on the board than Doughty. But, you know, he's been brilliant because he's a player that we didn't expect. And he helped us out with our defensive depth in FPL. He was a player that you knew you could go to for cheap money and get a good return from. You know, he's ended up in pretty much the top 20 of points returners from a defensive point of view. Still was only 6% owned by the end of the season, which is slightly surprising. Maybe it's because Luton were already relegated and stuff like that people weren't going there. But around 4 million, he was just a great asset and definitely the best newly promoted asset, I think, to have.
Yeah, hands down. I mean, and that's all with barely any clean sheets. So these are all attacking returns he's got his points from, which isn't what the bread and butter for a defender. Best manager is going to be controversial because in the chat we've had Iraola, Emery, Glasner. Of course, they've all been brilliant. If we're looking purely from an FPL perspective, though, we may have looked at that slightly differently. So let's have a look. In terms of best manager, I went Glasner because I do think he's provided us with a ton of good FPL assets. And you've gone Arteta again. At all times, we were looking at double, triple Arsenal. Since Glasner came in, we didn't buy Palace players enough. We only really concentrated on them around double game weeks and maybe for the last game week of the season. But when you look at the amount of goals Glasner's team has produced, we absolutely should have all had the likes of Mateta, Eze, Elise as standalone picks in our team, regardless of doubles. And then Arteta, same, like backing Arteta defenders, double Arsenal defence is probably my biggest regret this season. They've both been great.
Mate, I mean, Glasner, like, undeniably has done a brilliant job at transforming Crystal Palace from what they were under Roy Hodgson. But what Mikel Arteta's given us is a reliable goalkeeper. Most of this season, I didn't have a goalkeeper that I trusted or wanted or whatever. Once I turned to David Raya, I was happy with that. David Raya ends up he's the Golden Glove winner overall in the league, and he ends up second in terms of the goalkeepers in FPL. Defenders, the top 3 defenders in FPL this season: White, Saliba, Gabriel, all bringing the most points, all Arsenal players. Thank you very much, Arteta. In terms of midfielders, Palmer and Foden were the best 2 in the game, but Saka was there. He was 3rd, and Odegaard came in 6th. So Arsenal have 2 massive assets right up there. It was only really in the forward line that you didn't really give us a properly strong option to go with. But actually, in this game, that was fine because we had plenty of other places to go for our forwards. So I think Arteta helped us out massively this season, and having the reliability of those performers at Arsenal has been great.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think it'll be really interesting the price of Arsenal defenders in particular next season, because they've been a league of their own. Like when you look at White, Gabriel, and Saliba, the best value goalkeeper, Mark says none. Leno's been mentioned.
Leno was a good one, yeah. It was.
Leno was great, wasn't he? The problem with goalkeepers was the ones that were really good. I think Pickford has been the best keeper over the course of the season. They didn't do it early on, and loads went Pickford for the start of the season. They wildcarded 6, 7, 8 weeks later and sold him, and that's when he started getting all his points. But Raya, I just think because he was priced so low, it made him so good. And we're talking about value here. You were getting entry to the Arsenal backline and a guaranteed start for 4.5 million. You had to pay 5.5, 6 towards the end of the season for all the defenders starting, or for 3 of the defenders starting. So it was just a cheap route to the Arsenal backline, wasn't it?
It really was, yeah. It was exactly that. And it allowed you to have that double up without having to worry about picking an extra defender. He was so reliable. You knew all the season that he was going to be playing unless he was ineligible, because despite Arteta insisting at the start of the season that Ramsdale would be going head-to-head with David Raya to be the Arsenal's goalkeeper, it was absolutely never the case. Ramsdale never got a look in, and he was never going to be that man. So really stood out that David Raya became such a good asset. I wish I'd got on him earlier, if anything. I know he's not super cheap, but in terms of value, it was all there.
Yeah, like that. Linda said Pickford, but only had him for the first 7 game weeks. Oh, so annoying. So many did. I had Onana for the first 7 or wherever it is I wildcarded. And both Pickford and Onana started getting loads of clean sheets after the wildcard. Pickford only wins because of bonus. Yeah, interesting there. FPL Fella says Gianni'S looking fresh. I was with FPL Fella last night. Definitely had a fair few gins. Shall we move on to best value defender? We've got price predictions and our team of the season coming up. So stay with us and hit those buttons, guys. For one last time this season, if you're not already subscribed, do make sure you subscribe. We're going to have Euros content throughout the summer as well. Value defender. I mean, these guys are both brilliant. I can't believe Branthwaite was 4 million. He's always a 4 million gem. And 4 million defenders are not meant to be starters. Like FPL do not price a 4 million defender thinking they're a starter. Sometimes you'll get a starter from a newly promoted club that's 4 million. We all remember Lord Lundstrom a few years ago. But Branthwaite not only was a starter, but he was a starter for a Sean Dyche team that kept, I think, more clean sheets than any other than Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Ben White for value has just been great because he's got a ton of attacking returns and clean sheets.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously his price has risen throughout the season. So it would depend when you manage to get hold of him in terms of what value you actually got out of him. But, you know, there's been times this season when he was just barely owned, and he was clearly emerging as the best asset. But everyone was like Saliba, Gabriel. And it was Ben White that was quietly going about his business in the background. And yes, in the end, he ends up more owned. He ends up higher priced and all the rest of it. But I still think that Ben White, if you got on him at the right time, would have been the best value defender you could have picked up.
Yeah, he got 9 attacking returns this year, White. To put that into perspective, the likes of, I think, Saliba 3 and Gabriel similar. So, yeah, 9 attacking returns for White is huge. Value midfielder. I guess Cole Palmer's going to be the option for both of us here. I'll just give a special shout out. We've spoken about Palmer, but I want to give a special shout out to Anthony Gordon because this was a year we actually had 2 players priced around that 5.5 million point who just performed sort of so far and above any expectation. Like Gordon started the season at 5.5, Palmer at 5. Gordon, I think, was the 7th or 8th best midfielder in terms of points. Palmer, obviously the best. But also shout out to Declan Rice, who I think was probably 12th, 13th best performing midfielder. Declan Rice scored the same amount of points, -1, than Bruno Fernandes, who didn't have a bad season and justified at times his 8.5 price point. So Declan Rice and Gordon deserves a special shout out.
Yeah, he was my final day gamble, Declan Rice. I was really counting him. And he had that shot. He could have put him 1-0 up. He tried to score with his left foot and put it in the corner. Come on, Dec. But outstanding value. I was praising him for the whole season and just didn't pick him enough. I wish I just stuck by him and built the midfield around him with more expensive options. But there you go. We live and learn. Maybe next season I'll find a Declan Rice equivalent because he won't be that value again. But nor will Palmer. Palmer we'll talk about in a minute in terms of what it'll be worth next season. But that was an absolute steal for all of us, especially if you got on it straight away.
It really was. Zied, who won the Chasing Green Arrows mini league, has just posted on Twitter. So Zied, I've just followed you. I'll see what we can do in terms of some sort of nod to you winning the league. It is unfortunate, Zied. Don't want to rub salt into a wound, and you've got only reasons to celebrate. But this channel used to give out a hell of a prize for the mini league. So it's a shame you're missing out on that. But we didn't advertise it big this year, and we didn't have a prize. Maybe next season we'll have a small prize for the mini league winner. Value for forwards. I mean, yeah. Mateta is going to be an overwhelming favourite in the chat because of what he did yesterday and because of what he's done for the last sort of few months. But I've actually gone Watkins, and I know Watkins was expensive, but I feel like Aston Villa this season haven't been spoken enough about in terms of football pundits and in the media, but haven't been spoken enough about in terms of FPL assets. And we did have this one player, Ollie Watkins, who pulled up trees. He outperformed Haaland by 11 points. He started the season at like 8.5 million. Yeah, 8 million he started the season at. He's scored a huge amount of goals. He's clocked a ton of assists. So he's had 19 goals and 18 assists. That is unbelievable. Like, you don't expect your forwards to get that level of assist. Like, when we look at Haaland's numbers, he's had 27 goals, but only 8 assists. Watkins has been phenomenal. And yes, he's expensive, but he has definitely been outstanding value, and I think should have been higher owned than he was.
Yeah, you're probably right with that. But it's still a lot of money. So I can understand why some people think that there's still not value in that. Joe says Watkins has 37 returns in 37 starts. That is absolute value. And we'd have been taking that off most players at any other price point. So I think it's still fair. But I've gone for Mateta. I mean, a £5 million forward asset. To have him as your third forward he's ended the season as the 5th best striker in the game. If you were to take that measure out and just get him from the Glasner era and record his goals record since he came in, you're looking at it completely differently. And if you're able to identify that he was on the up at the right time, then it would be one of the best assets you could have had in the game this season. He's been brilliant in this late stage of the season. So for me personally, he was my best value forward because I got him in. At the same time, I was talking about getting Raya in and Gvardiol. Mateta was the other one. I was like, because I obviously had to do something.
Yeah.
And I went for it and didn't have somebody like Ollie Watkins in those closing weeks, and it didn't matter.
Yeah. Love that. There we go, guys. Thank you for all your suggestions. Do hit that like button if you fancy. How many are watching, Dean? Are we? Is it a quiet Monday?
Oh, let's have a look, shall we? I've not been keeping a close eye on the live chat, so I'll get my phone out and quickly check where we're at. There's 140 watching right now. So yeah, Yeah, not too bad considering the game is over. But people will be tuning back in for this, I'm sure, because there's no need to be watching it as a live show.
This is one I think for the next month will hopefully be of use to a few, and I'll enjoy the show. And if you're watching on catch up, then drop a comment with your thoughts of the season so far. We're also going to give a little nod to how FPL can maybe make tweaks. So all your suggestions, player price predictions, all of that, you can pop in the comments as well if you're watching on catch up. And hello to all you guys that do always watch on catch up. We appreciate you just as much as our live team. So let's move on then away from these awards and look at some other awards. What we got for you coming next? Let's have a look. I think we got our teams of the season. Teams of the season next, yeah. We're doing predictions. Even better. These are 8 players that will be popular next year if they're all in the league. Mo Salah. What prices do we think we will see for them? So let's go through them one by one. In terms of the end of the season, Haaland, I think, finished on 14.3. He started at 14. No player has ever been priced higher than 14 in FPL. I think they'll have to downgrade him next year. So I've gone with 13 million. Let us know in the chat what you think Haaland will cost next year. There'll be many guessing, I think, lower than that. But I think we'll see 13. I don't think they'll want to go too big on the deduction. A million off feels right. I mean, Geddy thinks he'll be 14 again. Lewis thinks surely Haaland stays at 14. I mean, he was 85% owned at 14 million at some point. So I hear that. I just think they'll have to go a little bit bigger with the drop because I think they're going to have to go bigger with a huge amount of increases for popular players, Gordon, Palmer. And with that, so managers can squeeze more luxury players in, which the game like doing because it helps promote it. I think they'll drop him.
I'd prefer it went the other way and it went to 15.
I like that.
Just because it means he's not going to be so highly owned and it gives you a proper decision to make as to whether you want him. I don't think they'll do it, but that I would rather see it go in that direction. To be like, okay, if you want the best player in the game, he is a standout number, and then you've got to fit the rest of your team in for £75 million.
Yeah.
And that gives you a totally different dilemma. So I would prefer it went that way. At 13 million, literally everyone will have him.
I think everyone will have him at 15, though. I don't think price matters with Haaland. I think we just go there because we're
20
scared of him.
20.
It's worth noting, FPL Chai went 20 odd game weeks without Haaland and was world number 2 or 1 without Haaland this season. Like, it was amazing that Chai did that and was successful with those efforts. And it wasn't that Haaland was underperforming. He was still clocking points, but Chai was able to go, that 4 or 5 million that I saved by not having Haaland, I can make 4 or 5 players stronger and get points on all of those guys. So I like it. Yeah. We'll get to Ben White in a minute, guys. I knew that one would jump out. Hold fire. We're going one by one here.
Heather says FOMO. Sorry, just going to say, but that's what it is in Haaland. Half the people don't even expect him to score some weeks, but they're like, okay, have my 14 million just in case he does. Yeah. It's like, that's not what this game is supposed to be about. We're having to be so cagey.
Yeah. Ollie Watkins started the season, and we just said at 8. He's going to have a big jump. He has to have a big jump. He is huge for Aston Villa. I think we go with 9.5. 9.5 could be ambitious. It could be 9. But yeah, he's going to be expensive. And when Villa score, you just know he's involved. I think let's move on to Foden, because this is again after yesterday. I wonder if I've gone too low on Foden. I mean,
I wonder that too.
Saka had a huge year the year before last, and still came in last season at 8.5. So like with these mid-priced, mid to expensive midfielders, they don't tend to give them big increases, even when they do really well. We saw that with Saka. But Foden's had, 19 goals, 8 assists. He's finished on 230 points. It's his biggest total by a country mile. He finished his previously on 135, 137 and 142. But his minutes have massively gone up this year. Like, he's played a load more minutes. And with that, knowing he started the season at 7.5 off the back of those returns, he has to be at least £1.5 million more, I think.
Yeah. Mark says Saka at 8.5 was criminally underpriced. And they probably learned. Yeah, they probably learned from that. Again, I feel like with premium players that they should be giving us a question to answer for ourselves. And Foden, You got him playing for the best team in the league. That's just won it 4 times in a row. He's just been named the best player in the division. He's won the Footballer of the Year. He just scored the goals that have sealed the title on the final day of the season. He's put in some unbelievable displays. Give us a proper question. Go 10 million. Because that forces you to properly think, and not as many people are going to go there. This is where I'd prefer to see the game going. Getty says they want to keep the casuals happy, so won't overprice a lot of top players to keep the people engaged, and that's kind of what you were talking about earlier. It's like they want people talking about this game, they want people playing this game, and obviously your team's going to look a lot sexier if you can afford to get Haaland in and Foden in and all these other names that you've actually heard of.
Yeah. Nice. Salah's got a drop. Again, it's Salah's weakest performance in terms of total points in his 6 or 7 at Anfield. He's still done well, over 200. He has missed more minutes this year with the AFCON and with an injury or two. But yeah, I mean, Salah should go down a lot, says ISG, 11 million. I still think because of what he's done over the last 6 seasons, he'll be 12-ish. But I think that might be overpriced. And I think Liverpool next season are a really interesting team to monitor. Knowing Klopp's gone, I'm not even sure top 4 is going to be guaranteed for Liverpool. And with that, I wonder how long it's going to take them to click. We've seen with the likes of Pochettino, it takes a long time. I think 12's a lot for him, but I think that's what they'll do. My headphones are starting to make noise. Damn. Thank you, CH. Let me stop touching them. That might help.
But yeah, Salah might well be in the Saudi Fantasy League, as Mark says. We'll have to wait and see. We'll be doing some shows covering that across the closed season and pre-season. So do keep it with Chasing Green Arrows, because we'll be covering the Euros and transfers, and maybe a bit of Copa America as well along the way. So let's keep an eye on what happens as that opens up.
Good stuff. I think we got a few more players to get through. We're going to look at Cole Palmer. Many will say Cole Palmer needs to be more than that, but he is playing for Chelsea. Let's not forget, Chelsea are not a Man City and Aston Villa or a Liverpool, although they are starting to score big goals. So maybe it's more like 9 million. I'd say between 8.5 and 9. I think he's worth every penny at 9 million or 8.5 million.
I mean, based on this season, yeah, Chelsea are going to be a much better team by the look of it next season. We'll see what happens with Poch. We'll find out in the next few days, but I expect he'll probably stay. It's harsh to sack him now, just as things have got better, isn't it?
You can't. Please don't. Please
I mean,
don't.
That would be so
Chelsea.
That would sum up this ownership if they now sack Pochettino just as things are starting to look good. I'll be happy as a Fulham fan to see Pochettino go now and you start all over again, but I don't think you will.
Honestly, 2 steps forward, 1 step back each time, or maybe it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back in a minute. Ben White, 7.5 million is a lot, but I just want to recap on Ben White's numbers. Like, he has been sensational. We've all had Gabriel this season, 149 points. Many have had Saliba, 164 points. Very few had Ben White, who outpointed them a lot. Like, he got 182 points. That's 33 points more than Gabriel. That's like an extra 30%, 20%. That's big for Ben White. And yes, he started the season at 5.5, slightly higher than the other two. He finished at 6.1. Maybe 7 million is realistic. But I think it would be fair to have Ben White as the highest defender in the game next season, because Arsenal clean sheet points are just so good. And yes, Trent's got pedigree on his side, but Liverpool don't keep cleans and haven't this season. So Trent's going to see a big drop. Like, he could go down to 7 and Ben White's at 5, or maybe they'll both be 7. Maybe that's a little bit fairer. Let us know what you think for White. White was never a rotation risk at the start of the season, Kelvin. I don't agree with that. I don't think he was. I think Ben White was nailed. I don't think yes, Timber came in, but he wasn't going to necessarily play right back.
I mean, who knows? Like, if Timber hadn't picked up that injury, I'm sure Ben White wouldn't have got these numbers. He wouldn't have seen as much game time as this and probably wouldn't have had a chance to establish himself. I don't think so, no. But, we won't know. It's an opportunity that he took full advantage of. And as a result, Arsenal are going to have to strongly consider how next season builds out. They're also going to try and sign a new left-sided defender. So there's the whole build of that team to take into consideration for next season. The way you've dressed it up, obviously, is that he was going to cost more than Trent going forward. Now, for the first time, I might be tempted to go on Trent at 7 million, to be honest. Like, so we have to see in pre-season what Arne Slot does with him, how Trent deals with the emotional impact of Klopp leaving. We saw yesterday that Trent had tears in his eyes. He's the guy that really helps him grow into the man that he is. So that'll be interesting, actually, to see what role Trent gets. Is he a right back? Is he going to be a midfielder? What does slot see for him? You're on mute, mate.
It's interesting with the new manager. With players like Trent, you're really intrigued because there's always been so much conversation about, is he a right back? Could he be a midfielder? Could he play higher up? Could he play more central? And a new manager might have a very different vision. So pre-season scouting for the likes of Trent is really important.
And James is just, wow. We don't know what to do with Reece James anymore, do we? We all think
suspended for the first 3 games, but
I definitely ain't picking him at the start. Yeah,
I still think that makes him like a game week 4 transfer in for many because he's going to be 5 million. There's no way Reece James is going to be more than that. He can't be because this year he was 5.5 and he's had no minutes. He's going to be 5 million, and if James gets game time, he's a gift at 5 million. He is a gift at 5 million. Gusto will probably be 5 million as well, and there'll be many that start the season with Gusto for obvious reasons. Who, by the way, will have a summer off. He didn't make the France squad, Gusto. And again, some of that, the Euros may play a part in our early season scouting because if you make it to the latter stages of the Euros, and the likes of England will, they should do, any excuse, then these guys might be back a little late for pre-season. I mean, I think the Premier League starts a week later this year than it did last year, but you could see a couple of late additions to summer camps, and with that, maybe game week 1 they're not fully up and running, and it's more game week 2, 3 for some of the players that played in a Euros final, for example. So yeah, it's going to be interesting with the likes of Reece James and Chelsea defence in general because we've been leaky this season, very leaky. So you're going to get some bargains in the Chelsea backline because we don't keep many clean sheets, but they do offer something in attack. The likes of Reece James, and even, I don't know if Cucurella will be first choice next season, but let's watch this space with Ben Chilwell too. I would love Chilwell to lock in a position, but Poch doesn't fancy him in a back 4.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
3 things certain in life, says Sokan: death, taxes, and never buy James and Darwin in FPL.
That's 4 things.
That is 4 things. James red card in game week 4, says FPL Joe. Love that. Let's have a look at our teams of the season so far then. We want your input in this as always, guys. Do let us know. And then we'll answer some questions towards the end of the stream. Maybe questions about, I don't know, anything you got for us. But we'll also think about how the game could change next season. Dean, this is your team of the season. Rather than go through the players we've already discussed, let's go through some that we haven't. So yeah, I mean, I guess that jumps out to me, Isak and Gordon, like a Newcastle double up.
Yeah, I mean, they just ended up as brilliant assets in the end, and Isak comes in as the 4th best forward in the game and ends up 3 points short of Solanke. Obviously, Isak was a more expensive pick, but when I'm picking this FPL team of the season, it's like a personal thing. So these are players as well that have helped my season. So that's why you got, Raya, Gabriel, Gvardiol, all heavily influenced my season. So did Mateta. But Isak too, I managed to get in at key times of the season and managed to catch his goals. Like yesterday, I was unsure on the final day on Gordon or Isak. I could only really get one in if I was going to put Declan Rice into my team. And I decided to go with Isak over Gordon. And thankfully, I got that right. But it wasn't easy. And that's because across the season, Gordon was probably one of the most underrated assets in the game. One of the most underrated players in the Premier League, to be honest with you. He ended up as 20% owned, but it wasn't the case for a lot of the season. He ends up as the 7th or 8th most highest point scoring midfielder. His performances were just phenomenal. Like, Gordon hit different levels this season. I've always struggled to understand how good he is, but this season he proved how good he is. He is a top level wide player and someone that definitely I'll be considering for the start of next season because I'm expecting Newcastle to step up again next year. So let's wait to see. I know that Newcastle are really looking at the moment at a new forward. It's probably going to be a right-sided forward that they're looking to buy. So that'll be interesting to see what type of forward they get in there.
I like that. Goodbye, Miggy Almiron. Mark Nash says, Liverpool finished 3rd, but no representation here. Mark, just to recap, this is an FPL team of the season. If it was Dean's actual team of the season, there would still be no Liverpool representation.
There would be literally no Liverpool players. I don't understand which Liverpool asset would be getting into this team.
I mean, even Carragher and Neville, between the two of them, their team of the season, they had one Liverpool player between the two. I think one of them, probably Carra, had Van Dijk in. But yeah, not for me. Not for me at all.
No, like, that's not right. Like, Van Dijk, I don't think...
He's had a bad season for Van Dijk.
he's obviously he has had a good season. I'm not going to say he hasn't, but from an FPL team of the season, he definitely doesn't make it. And even if I was doing my actual team of the season, he's on the fence.
Which you've done. I saw your ranks team this season. He wasn't in there, was he?
No, because I went with the Arsenal defenders because they were better.
So did I. Kwanzaa over Van Dijk is bold, but yeah, clearly a one for the future. I like that shout. There's nothing overly controversial in there. I mean, Mateta, you could argue he's only done it for half the season, but the points speak for themselves.
The points speak for themselves. Say like an FPL team of the season. I think like for me again, like there was times when I had Solanke in my team, and Solanke I was having him in weeks when he didn't deliver. So this is all personal. But Mateta is one of those players that I'll look back on this season and be like, he absolutely saved me. And like having his hat trick yesterday again was great. And yeah, there's just moments and players that live with you on the back of an FPL season. And Mateta will be remembered for that.
Yeah. Let's move on from Dean's team and have a look at mine. There's actually quite a few differences. Like we very easily just could have gone and picked the 4 midfielders with the most points, 3 forwards with the most points, and the 3 defenders with the most points. I went double Everton defence because I just want to shout out Sean Dyche teams in FPL. We've been here before. When Sean Dyche was the manager of Burnley, we all had Nick Pope in goal, or we all had Ben Mee at the back. Like there were Sam Allardyce the same. Sam Allardyce and Sean Dyche teams, you can back for a good amount of clean sheets, and they're usually teams with lowly priced assets. So I'll remember that for next year. If there's a cheap value option and Sean Dyche is still at Everton in the back, I'll probably cover that defence. I've gone for Saka. I don't know if you had Saka in your team. No. So I've gone for triple Arsenal, double defence without Gabriel, who's the guy I've owned all season. I don't think I owned Saliba or White once. Really bad there. My biggest regret is not having double defence at Arsenal. Gordon was criminally underlooked, as you said, Dean, for a good long stretch. I think his home record was probably the best home record in FPL this season. Like pretty much every home game he returned. It was outrageous form. And then, am I right in thinking you didn't have Solanke?
Didn't have Solanke, no.
So that's one of the differences. You went Mateta and Solanke. Just a good source of points. I don't think Solanke was overly explosive. Like, I doubt there were many double-digit hauls from Solanke, but I bet there was a ton of 6 to 8 pointers where he sort of gets 1 goal and maybe a couple of bonus. I'm just looking now at double-digit hauls. Oh, okay. So we got one in game week 25, game week 18. Yeah, he got 3 double-digit hauls all season. So when you see a player that reaches 175 points, you expect a good 5, 6, 7 amount of double-digit hauls. Solanke only got 3. So he just ticked along. And with that, he was probably a little bit, was probably overlooked a tad. He did have 1 hat-trick, says Mark. Good knowledge. Yeah, I think he had a 17-pointer. Saka with the most yellow flags. Yeah, maybe we should have had that in our awards. Kai deserves a mention. And he does, because David, you're right. Like, especially second half of the season, when Kai started playing number 9, his FPL points massively shot up. And Dean, next season, Kai is going to be listed as a forward. He has to be because he's played number 9.
Yeah.
So he's an option because I don't think he'll be expensive. I think he'll be an 8 million forward, similar sort of price to a Solanke probably.
Yeah, we'll have to wait to see what other forward Arsenal do end up signing. You know, for a while we've been led to believe that it would be an out-and-out number 9. And now the feeling around a lot of people is that it won't be an out-and-out 9. It'll be somebody who's a bit more versatile, somebody that could also go wide if they had to. And that would make sense because it allows Kai Havertz to play centrally too. And I don't think, I definitely think Arsenal's thing to improve on is to get a more reliable goal scorer. I think that's one thing. When you look at all the stats from this season, they still managed to score a lot of goals, but they didn't have the go-to guy that everybody else had. Like Saka ends up as their top goal scorer, and I don't really consider that Saka was that deadly around goal this season, to be honest with you. And I think that if they'd have had someone that they could have turned to more frequently to just be that guy, and this is kind of obviously what Man City did. They used to share the goals around, and in the end were like, let's go for Haaland and do it a different way. I wonder what Arsenal will end up doing there. But yeah, an upgrade on somebody like Jesus, as Geddy asks about, I think would be a good idea just to get the numbers up from that sense. Tony dropping in, that's not happening. Ivan Toney's not joining Arsenal this summer. I'm not sure where he'll end up. Might be Tottenham, but Ivan Toney's not going to Arsenal. They're no longer interested.
There we go. Dean, let's move away from our teams of the season and just give a nod to if we were in charge of Fantasy Premier League, what changes to the game would we make? And everyone in the chat's going to have options here. You're not allowed to just to go with, I'm going to completely rip up the game and start again. But if there was one or two subtle changes, what would you make? It could be chip strategy. It could be player positions or prices. I have one. I often think with stuff in life, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And FPL isn't broken, and they have a huge amount of new managers every season that join, and they need to appeal to the masses. So by going too niche and by creating prices for players where you have to pick 3 Burnley players and a West Ham player in your squad every season because you can't afford all the good players from the good teams, it doesn't appeal to the masses. So it's not a realistic change for me. But there is a subtle change I would like to see, and it was discussed on Black Box, I think, by my friend Mark Southerns earlier in the week. His idea, and he used to work with the Premier League making the game. He invented Fantasy Football Scout, the creator of Fantasy Football Scout. Mark's recently said he thinks they should have a cap of 2 players per team. And I think that would be really interesting. You don't need to rip up player prices. You just go, you're only allowed 2 from each team. And it means you then can't have a squad of 15 just from top 4 or top 5 teams.
Yeah.
And I play Serie A fantasy. And my favourite thing about that game is you can only have 2 from each team. So Inter Milan this year, I would have loved triple Inter, but I couldn't have double defense or double attack because I was like, oh, I need 1 defender and 1 attacker. And at times I was like, I really want Lautaro and Thuram, but I can't get there because I've got to have Bastoni or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just think the 2 with Arsenal this season, would we have had with Man City this season? Guardiola was doing so well, but we might have all had Foden and Haaland. How do you make that cool? It gives you an extra question each week. So I'd love that rule. I don't think it will happen, but I would love it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I liked the rule that you mentioned last week. I don't know if it's on here or not, but you talked about how penalty goals shouldn't count for the same as a normal goal. I like that. Like that would, even if it's just 1 point less, that's fine because it doesn't make you just want to pick all the penalty takers. Yeah. That gives you a bit more to think about. Let's just read through a few before we end this. Right, Getty says, I'd like to see a chip where you can cap 1 defender, 1 mid, and 1 striker all in the same week. Blimey! Imagine the points all we'd be getting.
Maybe it's like then defaults to like your best tool is where the armband actually ends up going.
Yeah, I like that. That would be fun. Change the point system to make defensive midfielders more important. Says she busted me.
Fair point.
I mean that's. Yeah, players like Rodri get massively overlooked, even though when he started weighing with goals in a season like that, we still barely talked about him today. It's completely underrated when it comes to a game like this. ISG says, I'm the opposite to what Gianni says. I want 4 or 5 from the same club. I don't think you do. That's you do. This is the problem that like the World Cup game had. Like the World Cup game when you can have like 5 Brazil players, by
like the semi-finals or whatever it was.
So rubbish. Yeah. It was so rubbish. Like you think you want that, but you don't. There's no fun in that.
Yeah, especially think at the end of the season, we would have all had 4 or 5 Man City, Arsenal, and Palace players, and it just would have been boring.
There's no knowledge needed. There's no actual game watching needed. They don't need to dig into the stats as much. You just pick the top 4 teams. You just pick a few of their assets each. It wouldn't be the same, I promise.
There's a few saying, like she busted me home, says 1 sub during a game week. A few have said moving captaincy. And this is what we're going to see with the Euros game. You can move captaincy. What I would say about in mid-game week decisions, that isn't going to be a game that appeals, I don't think, to the masses long term. If you're playing Fantasy Premier League, you want to be able to lock your team in on a Friday and you want to just forget about it for the weekend if that's your thing and you're a more casual manager and you want to come back on a Monday and look at your points. And that is how 95% of managers play the game. And we must remember that. Changing your captain or making a sub mid-game week will turn a lot of those masses off because it's too much admin over the course of a weekend. We want to be able to enjoy the football and then come back in on a Monday and see how many points you got. So I don't think I'm a fan of those mid-game week changes.
Yeah, no, and I definitely am not a fan of that at all. I don't like it. Whenever we play those types of games, you can change. Just doesn't appeal to me at all, and I know that I'm going to forget, and that's someone who's engaged and does this for a living, so I can't imagine like people who are literally doing 9 to 5s where they can't even like be on their phones or whatever. Yeah,
it's fine in the Euros game where you just got to do 4 or 5 weeks of it or 3 weeks of it, but over a 10-month season, doing that every weekend, I think that's a little bit too intense.
What about if you had to pick 1 captain for the season?
One
immovable player.
1 immovable player is great, unless they get injured. Or if they get injured, you're punished.
But everyone would pick Haaland as the problem. But it can't be Haaland.
Can't be Haaland or Salah. I quite like it. I like
one. Or you had to pick player. Yeah.
One immovable player is quite fun.
We talked before in my mini league about like banning certain players. And it's never come through because obviously you're also in other leagues and it's going to affect you of how you're reflected. But I think it was during the Aguero time we were mainly talking about it because it was just such a joke how Aguero was like getting all the points for everybody at one stage. But yeah, I would like maybe just like take Haaland out of the game for a season. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I remember doing a season where I was just like, I'm just not picking Wayne Rooney. I just dislike Wayne Rooney. I'm not going to pick him. It doesn't matter how good he is. It was just like my own rule.
I did a season once where I would only pick English players. It was a disaster.
That was definitely off the back of a World Cup or a Euros.
It was a disaster. I thought I picked my team at the start of the season. It's like this could do really well, and then as the injuries started to tot up, and I was calling on these like depth players from English, it didn't go very well. Mate, maybe I'll try again with the second team.
With that in mind, just have a look at my. I don't know if Mr. Producer, if we can just bring up my team of the season really quickly. But my team of the season, check out this. When you see it, you go, "OMG! This is all like." Look at the midfield. It's all. Look at that midfield for England.
Wow.
Ben White, Pickford, Branthwaite, the midfield, Ollie Watkins and Solanke in there. I've pretty much gone through it. Yeah, I know. Honestly, only Haaland and Saliba. And
technically Haaland's English.
Yeah, he was born in Leeds. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. I nearly mentioned that on Sky Sports News yesterday about England and the Euros when I showed this very team and thought, no, nip it in the bud, Gianni.
Leave it.
We'll come away from my team of the season. I've seen far too much of that. So yeah, subtle changes could come in, but I would be surprised. I think because FPL now have launched the challenge game, that will be again a focus for next season and how they improve that. I'd be surprised if we see any changes to the actual game, but let's see. Maybe we will. And again, maybe there's a tweak with a chip. We haven't seen a chip change for a while. We did used to have the all-out attack chip that was replaced with, I think, free hit 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, off core. That is very generous of you, mate.
That is very generous. Thank you so much. But yeah, shout out to the producers of this show. There's 2 of them who do a lot of work behind the scenes for us. Don't get the glory of me and G sat here taking all the praise, but yeah, a lot of work does go on from those guys, and they sit here every week and switch the screens around and stick everything on there and get your polls out and do the work that goes onto the social media and everything. So thanks to those guys, but thanks to all of you for turning up week after week after week all season long. You've been very, very loyal, and we hope we've repaid you with some tips along the way. It sounds like most of you have had a pretty good season, so well done to everyone as well.
The chat genuinely are the guys that keep us going. Like, you're the reason we turn up 3 times a week. Like CH and Heather and British 87 and Off Core. You're the reason why we do this stream 3 times a week. Dean and I love doing our Mondays and Fridays because we know all of our favourites, all of our chasers are going to be with us. Mark's going to be with us. Luke's going to be with us. Freddie's going to be with us. Ice G. Feels like we know you guys so well. So thank you for your ongoing support. We can't wait to see you next season.
Yeah, and we'll be back before then because we're going to do some shows through the summer. So we haven't got a strict plan yet, have we, mate? But there's definitely going to be some... We're going to have a couple of weeks off at the very least. But we are going to be coming back. And I'll be back before I get to America. So, yeah, it's still a little while before I go to America. So we'll have the build up to all of that as well. But... yeah, we'll have a breather. I've got to go to transfer mode anyway, so I need to go into my cocoon and come out as a butterfly and come out as a transfer guru.
You'll definitely come out as a pretty butterfly, mate, with some San Diego tint. I look forward to Euros content, which will be the week before the Euros. If the Euros kicks off on a Friday, Saturday, expect videos dropping on that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that.
Yeah, it'll be like the 9th, 10th, around the end of June, I imagine we'll start coming back on. So look out for that. And if I don't see you, then thank you, everyone. I will see you on the other side of the world when I get there.
Love that. Final shout out to our mods. Thank you, guys. You know you are. You've been awesome. And thank you also to our producers. Dean mentioned them. If you want to see our producers, they actually do present on their own YouTube channel, their second YouTube channel, which is the brother or sister channel of Chasing Green Arrows. It's called Chasing the Target. If you're into cricket, Chasing the Target is the YouTube channel for you. So do check out at Chasing the Target if you want to meet our 2 producers. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for your support. We will see you on the other side. For one last time this season, He's been Dean up in Gianni, and we've been chasing green arrows.